that, and it's something that Maxine.
Unfortunately, I don't know. It's pathetic, isn't it? Really.
So we don't know how many we're waiting for.
No, we have at the moment 4 or 5 with lots of people joining us now.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to mute. I'm going to mute myself, Paul. It's your show, and Kally.
Paul will have to decide and tell me when to start.
Yeah, we'll give it a couple of minutes. Hello to those who are joining us now. We just wait for people to get in and join us, and we'll get going in a couple of minutes. Leave it just one more minute. Open the door. Well, I think we're at 1 minute past 2, so we are a small but very select group today. There's a few familiar faces with us. I'm Paul Winder from MGI in the UK. I'm delighted to introduce Kally Gill to you all. Kally is a well-known RPA consultant in the UK. She's been working with our institute and in the industry for more years than I would think possible looking at her, I must admit. So I'm not going to even quote that number, Kally.
Thank you.
But it's an area that it's touching on our world more and more. So the idea of today is to give us a good grounding in what RPA is all about. And so we can carry on from today, but we should have that base understanding. If you have any questions you want to raise as we go through, do pop them in the chat box. If they're pertinent to the moment, I will disturb Kally. Otherwise, I'll keep them for the end. And do flood us with questions, because it's great to see all the things that most of us are thinking about, but normally only 1 or 2 will ask. So feel free to pop your questions in the chat box. And with no further ado, Kally, I'm going to hand over to you.
Okay, thanks, Paul. So, yeah, following on what Paul said, I have been in automation many years, about 30 years. Yeah, the automation has sort of changed. The tools have changed. The principles more or less stay the same. The way you deploy those haven't changed that much. So I think that's something I'm going to touch on later. But let me start with an introduction to what it is firstly, and why there's such a hype about it. Okay, my controls aren't working, Paul. Do you need to give me control?
I'm not aware that I haven't given you control. Clive, you're in the
controls. There should be on your PowerPoint controls, or you can use that's from PowerPoint. Yeah.
Let's
try using the cursor keys on your keyboard
Yeah, I'm trying that. Hold on.
So it's within PowerPoint. Is the.
Oops. Let's go back to here. Yay. Okay. Right. Okay, so first question, what is robotic process automation? The simplest way for me to explain it just to you guys with your sort of background would be if you've ever worked with Excel macros, it's basically the same recording of those actions with a screen recorder, without the use of sort of programming or coding languages. And recording that data, and it saves it into a file. So RPA is basically an Excel macro, but not just for Excel, for anything on your desktop, any application, any system, any screen that you can see on a human worker can see on their desktop. So that's the difference. It's an expanded use of automation. Obviously, it's more sophisticated than an Excel macro. Okay, so basically, once you've got this recorded file of all your actions, that can be played back as many times as you like. You can make copies of it. You can run the same, what we call a digital worker or a bot, on multiple machines. So typical application for it is where you have got manual work, manual repetitive work. So usually the human worker is a sort of linkage between other systems. So any process in any business usually is a combination of an automated system, and in between, well, it could be several systems, and in between you've got the manual effort, linking the systems together, maybe copying data across, maybe data entry. So that's where the human intervention comes. So what the bots do, the robots do, is actually replace those manual efforts, those manual intervention that's usually needed. So it's fair to say RPA is not a system that replaces any of your systems. It's basically replacing the actions of the human worker. Okay, so that means once it's recorded, it's playable repeatedly. It can run on multiple machines. So it basically running on 10 machines, you've got 10 digital workers straight away. It can run 24/7, so not just 9 to 5. So your processing can work overnight. So that's very scalable. Okay, so what makes RPA different to any, the traditional IT systems that we've had before? Well, firstly, it's very easy to use. As I said, there's no programming, so the development of it isn't lots of code that needs to be writing by somebody. Doesn't need that very specific specialist skill that is usually required. Also, and this is quite a big thing, is that the systems that you're talking to, the systems you're integrating with, you don't need to know how they work, how to talk to them, how to pass data from one to the other. With traditional IT systems, you've got to understand that system's language, the API as they're technically called. So this works from the front of the screen. So it literally captures what you're doing on the screen from the front end. So it doesn't care what type of system it is, whether it's a web-based application or it's written in-house, makes no difference because it's working on the front end. Okay, so because it is easy to use and quick to develop, it's very agile, and usually within, I'd say 4 to 8 weeks, you could actually have a bot in production from development all the way through, depending on the complexity of it, of course. Now that comparison to traditional systems is significantly smaller duration. Okay, so I'm going to play you a video, which I think graphically explains it very well. It's always good to see a visual. Let me play that for you.
Enter the world of robotic process automation. Imagine a business process that occupies most of your day at work. Repetitively collect PDF attachments from emails, extract data from those PDFs into Excel, log the data into web-based forms, and send out confirmation emails. Your team is spending a significant amount of their time on these mundane processes, and it seems never-ending. Now, what if we could train software robots to take over these mundane processes? Software bots can be trained to execute your repetitive daily tasks while you invest your precious time in work that adds more value to your business process. Let's see how we can train the software robots to perform a business process. We instruct the bot to do each of these activities. And then deploy. Now sit back and watch the bot relieve you from the drudgery. saving the PDF attachments into a separate folder? Done. Extracting data from PDF files and consolidating them in an Excel file? Done too. It can even automatically sign into the web-based CRM. Picking up data from Excel and logging it into the web-based CRM is a breeze, error-free, and at such a rapid pace. Finally, it completes the business process by sending confirmation emails. As the bot takes over your repetitive tasks, you can now focus on the more rewarding and higher value-adding activities.
Okay. So that's just a few examples of some applications that you can work with. But let's look at the broader spectrum here. So you've got your normal, office tools, your Excel, your Word, PDFs, and then you've got, the email functions that you need on a regular basis. But what's key to remember here is that it's any desktop application that you've got. As I said, it could be a third-party software. It could be your an in-house written system. It could even be a system that you've got on a different platform altogether. So we have seen cases where, that can integrate into a window that talks to a mainframe or a Linux machine. And that works quite well as well. Okay, so the common sort of processes, as I said, so your processes, it can be in any industry sector really, and any department within your business. Here you've got everything from HR through to finance, which are the two common uses. It could be your IT functions that you do regularly. It could be sales, like you said, updating the CRM. But whichever process it is that you're automating, there are certain attributes that really that suit RPA, and that is if they're very repetitive, high volume, very manual, time-consuming tasks. And that's where you're going to reap most of the benefits of RPA. That's just a few example of some COVID applications of RPA, just to show you that the speed that companies can actually respond to changes and pandemics that we've seen. So it's not just the NHS, but companies have had to adapt their processes because of the less resource available, not being in the office, and the whole process are changing. And within weeks or days, even some of these have been put into production and made for business purpose. So it just shows the rapid development of it. So I'm going to play a invoicing demo, which I think more relates to what you do. Just play that for you. Can you hear the volume on that?
No, I can't hear anything, Kally.
Okay, that's not playing the volume. So what? 1 second. Back. I think it's on mute.
Speed of operations while radically driving.
Okay, let's stop.
RPA can do for you. In short, it provides a competitive advantage by helping you improve both accuracy and speed of operations while radically driving down costs. So how does it work? In this video, we'll show you how a UiPath streamlines an invoice process end to end. You are about to see a robot performing the following activities. Monitoring a dedicated folder where invoices are saved in PDF format. Reading invoices from that folder one by one. Extracting key information from the invoices. Opening SAP. Filling in invoice details in SAP. Sending email notifications. Please note that the robot will do some activities in the background, such as most of the invoice-related actions, monitoring a folder or checking its email address. Now let's see it working. Right now, it's monitoring a folder where 3 invoices are stored and collecting all the information needed so it can register them one by one. It then asks the tester to introduce the email address where the posting notification will be sent, and also performs basic checks to see if the SAP is open and runs it on its own if not. Logging into SAP using its credentials, it then starts processing the invoices one by one. We can see it filling in data such as vendor code, invoice date, invoice number, invoice amount, invoice description, and GL account, and ends up by filling the payment term. Following that, it registers the remaining 2 invoices in the assigned company code. An email containing the SAP registration number is sent automatically by the robot after successfully registering each invoice. Checking in the background, the robot verifies whether the VAT on the invoice matches the one in our database, and if so, will post it automatically. Otherwise, it will park it and send a dedicated email to the responsible person highlighting this difference and asking what to do. Post the invoice or to cancel it and send it back to the vendor. All the invoice's details are visible in the email it sends, so let's reply with yes to the message for an invoice with a VAT difference. Finally, it will check its email address in the background, access SAP using the appropriate transaction code, and post the invoice. And that's it. The robot has successfully posted the 3 invoices in SAP. Do you want to know more? We're happy to help. Contact us here.
Okay, just something I wanted to point out before I forget is you saw a couple of demos there. They're by different companies. So the RPA is a technology, but there are multiple vendors on the market, 30, 40 well-known vendors. And the top 3 are Automation Anywhere, UiPath, and Blue Prism, I would say. And now Microsoft also have their own version of RPA, which is called sort of Power Automate is part of that. Okay, so I'll discuss that a bit further down as well. What tool to use, etc. So, what are the huge benefits then? What is it giving people? So, without a shadow of a doubt, it's the cost savings. That first attracts a client to deploy something like RPA. It's very simple to work out in the sense that, X number of man hours reduces your cost by XYZ. But that's just part of it. The actual cost of the labor is only one aspect of the savings. Also, if it's making your system more efficient, if it's working 24/7, there's less weekend work and overtime. If you're if it was more human involvement, it's more error prone. What we find now is probably something like 100% accuracy with the automation, whether it's data entry or whether it's just common mistakes. That is cost saving as well to a company. So there's all these other hidden costs that are normally there. Okay, so what we've seen from testimonials I'll show in a few minutes is that there is a huge return on investment that makes this automation very attractive for what you're putting in, the amount of time you're putting in, and seeing the results pretty quickly makes it pretty large, significant return on investment. So as I said before, the data accuracy and the efficiency is something that is probably a bit more difficult to put a price and a cost on, and happier customers meeting your service level agreements. There's probably a benefit and a cost to that as well. Okay, so scalability, as I've already explained, is if it's a process that's been running by multiple people across, different machines, then straight away you're seeing the benefits. The development of one bot can be copied across multiple desktops. And there's two ways of running your automation. One is at desktop, so the user, when he's ready to process, just clicks a button and off it goes. Goes and makes a cup of tea, comes back, and it's all done. And the other is unattended, which is basically run by your IT. It doesn't interrupt your desktop activities. It's invisible to the user, and it's sort of running in the background behind the scenes. You'll just see the output and the data and the fact that the process is done, and maybe a notification by email. So as I said, two ways of running it. Okay, so let's look at some sort of, I'm sticking to invoicing really because of your accountancy background, and but this is not limited, in finance to just these type of processes, but they're just good examples that invoicing is always the first and easy low-hanging fruit, but there's other time-consuming tasks that are in setup, the vendor and supplier setup, and also maybe the tedious tasks of reconciliation or discrepancy, resolving those, that sort of thing can be made easier. Again, anything time-consuming and tedious that does not require a lot of human intelligence, it's ideal for. Okay, very quickly look at this another invoicing use case by Wipro. What I would always point out is look at the accuracy. They say like 100% accuracy, and that's that's quite key, as well as you save half the time in running the process and half the time of manual labour, which obviously is a cost saving. And that seems to be consistent across the sort of user cases. You've got 75% straight through processing there without any human intervention, and again, errors down to zero. So the data accuracy and it seems to eliminate the human error. And in this example, there's more than half, of manual effort saved and automated. Okay, so yeah, it all sounds really good. It all sounds simple and very rewarding. But there are a few things I'd like to point out that you need to bear in mind before you embark on your journey. And that is that there are still going to be other costs involved, and it's not just the development. So you get huge savings compared to traditional IT systems on the development time. As we said, it's low code or no code in most of the tools. But you still maybe need to train people if you're going to support the code in-house. If not, there's no training cost. But I think people forget that there's a lot of testing to be done. So if you want this production worthy and you want a robust automated solution, then you've got to do lots of testing. You have to throw a lot of exceptions at it. You have to throw all sorts of problems just to make sure that it can bounce back and keep running. And that testing time, yes, it's done by your in-house experts and so on, and your users, but usually whoever's helped you develop would have to do some support and fix during that testing. So there is a little bit of resource cost during that period as well, and then delivering it into production. After production, you probably need some kind of support if you don't have the expertise in-house, and that is if the robot fails or it sends an alert notification, somebody should be looking at those. And the whole setup of the infrastructure, the buying of the software licenses, of course, but there's also the cost of your machines and your IT people, the technical infrastructure required for those. As I said, usually the bigger cost is the first year, it's a one-off, and the rest, the ongoing support is usually just the operation and maintenance and continuous business improvement. Just something to bear. Okay, so here's an example of it's not finance. It's an example that we did for a power company, a national power company that had 15 people in a team that were processing these billing exceptions. So it's a billing system, and a lot of these exceptions, i.e. the bills that weren't processed properly, people weren't being billed, was costing the company quite a lot, and there was quite a backlog. So if they're not billing people, they're not getting paid. They're losing income. So it required 15 people and quite a lot of overtime work as well, because it just weren't catching up. So what we did was automate the second part of the process, which was very repetitive, very manual intensive, and usually required about 10 people, just Monday to Friday. We did a Robot that did sort of 1,000 transactions a day. We copied those bots onto 3 different machines. So we had 3 digital workers, 3,000 transactions basically a day, running 24/7 and at weekends. And that eliminated all the overtime, the weekend work. And by the next morning, all the backlog was cleared. So as I said, that left 5 people to do the actual, intelligent bit, which is deciding what action to take for each problematic billing exception, as they called it. So that's 10 FTEs, which is quite considerable saving. Another thing I must point out that happens when people automate their old processes is they have a look at them and start reviewing, and then realise they've been doing things maybe, inefficiently, things that, they could remove, steps they could remove out of the process, and also maybe using, better tools these days, automate some of the other parts of the process using other tools. So what we found here was the data entry side of it, that those people were doing on deciding what actions were done per bill. That was that could have been put into a database, so it's quicker than going through the screens. They put it into a database with a nice user interface, which they wrote themselves, and that speeded up the process considerably. And that wasn't even RPA that did that. Saying that, in phase 2, we are looking at ways of maybe reducing those 5 people who make those decisions on what to do, because it's not as complex as they initially thought. There are key things that they look for, and the robot can make that decision in many cases. So, it's going to gradually expand as they get more, comfortable with using RPA. Okay, so so what would you do next if you're interested? So you like the sound of RPA, you want to know, could it help your business, your processes? Then the first thing I would look at is look at your business processes. It may be in your department, or it could be another department in your company where you think, wow, I know they spent so many hours, and people work overtime, and it's it could be at peak times. It's a problem, month end, for example. So those sort of processes where high volume, very repetitive, manually intensive. And then pick a process out of those that I would say is probably for a proof of concept. If you want to see it really working on your systems, get somebody in to set up a little proof of concept, sort of thing we do as a consultancy. There's multiple, as I said, RPA vendors out there for tools. You could pick anyone, I would say, to start with. Just pick anything just to do a proof of concept, whichever's quicker. Pick a simple process that we can done in a few days and have it running, just so it's something to show, to show the business if they like the idea of it. Okay. The other thing I would say is have a play around which type of tool, what the cost of the tool matters as well. Suits what's fitness for purpose for you. There are a lot of free trials out there by vendors, and there's also what we call community editions, which you can sort of keep forever. They may be limited in their use, but it gives you a good starting hands-on to play around with the tool. But as I said, there's no code, so a lot of business users who are a little bit technical savvy, don't have to be hugely technical, they can start playing around and getting a feel for it. Okay, so once you've decided, okay, we like this, should we deploy it? Is it going to save us money? So that's where I think you've got to look at all those costs I mentioned earlier. Once it's developed, yes, the development might only be 8 weeks, but what are all the other costs involved and the support of it afterwards, whether that support is from an external consultancy or whether it's from your internal people. Okay, then there's the cost of the software, of course, and the licenses that you need to run on each machine. cost all that, look at some processes that are probably, low-hanging fruit and, are going to give you almost immediate return on investment. So yes, you might have some complicated processes, but I think my recommendation is always go for something that's going to save you costs straight away, and then look at the more complicated systems later. And the reason for that is, sort of the first year, there's a lot of initial setup costs and so on, and you want to get that, the business want to see that return on investment quite quickly within the first year or two. So, and you're going to have to sell it to your business sponsors and your management. So, picking the right process is quite important. You want to get IT on board quite early. So yes, even though the business may do the initial review and selection, you will need IT. As I said, once it's all packaged, you need someone with the expertise who's going to package that robot or make it robust, knows how to code it so that it is, foolproof, and someone who can support it later, and the infrastructure, so that's going to be IT usually. So, and any consultancy that you choose for your development and support. So I would probably involve those people pretty early on as well. Okay, so I think that's my initial presentation. Hopefully you've got some questions for me.
Hi, Kally. Yeah. Well, one of the things could you clarify as a starting point, the difference between RPA and AI, because there's been quite a lot of discussion about artificial intelligence in certain parts of our world, in auditing in particular, but just to clarify the difference between the two.
Okay, so robotic process automation, I hope that illustrated that in the presentation, is for very structured work. Certain sequence happens, X, Y, Z, base sequence. The data is usually very structured as well. He knows where to go, what to do next. It's very clear. It's coded. It's pre-built beforehand. That's the difference. I think with AI, there's that sort of intelligent side that's needed. A little bit what the human person would do, human intelligence. So, for example, if it's an instruction to give somebody, is that written in English? Now, an RPA bot would not understand maybe subtle sort of English-like words in a sentence. It needs to have specific data. So there's lots of AI out there that can translate written text, translate the sentiment of the text even. So a lot of companies use it, for example, their Twitter pages even, to see, okay, generally all these comments we're getting, are they positive, are they negative? So there's all this, the subtlety side of it, which requires more of a clever intelligence. And even on the invoicing side, for example, you've got multiple formats for invoicing. The invoice number is not going to appear in the top right-hand corner all the time. So they've had to build a little bit of AI or machine learning into some of the RPA tools. So one of the examples you saw where it was picking data from anywhere in the page on a PDF, that's a little bit of AI and machine learning being used there within the RPA to help it find where on the page is the information that you need. And you have to sometimes train the bot. So you give it 10 examples. Yeah, this is where I'm extracting the data. It then works out, there's a pattern. Seems to be where I've got certain labels, etc., and it does it for you. So it's sort of half clever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yes, and there's chatbots and so on. So if it's a customer contact center, for example, they may use a chatbot that works out what sort of problem has this customer got. So the chatbot is working out. Once this artificial intelligence is used to work out what it is that customer wants, then it can kick off an RPA bot that just goes and processes it.
Okay.
So,
a good example. I'm sure we've all spoken to more chatbots than we realise for.
Yeah. As I said, AI is not, I wouldn't say it's 100% accurate in there from the chatbots, but as each day goes on, there's more AI in everything. AI in our phones, AI in our televisions. But the thing with RPA is it's it does what it says on the box. It's here and it works. I don't even know why companies do the proof of concept, because there's so many companies using it. It's not really emerging technology anymore. It's here and it's working. So it's not a case of AI, show me proof of concept. Does it really work? You know, it does work, and it does exactly what it says on the box.
No, I'm sure we are the restricting factors in using these, using RPA to automate processes, because we just don't think about it, don't have the understanding to choose the right projects. Roger's actually asked a question. Could he use RPA so that it indexes attachments to emails and file them in their document management system?
Yeah, certainly. It depends what criteria you're using. To, you know, I mean, that's pretty standard. You can read emails, you can download attachments, that's for sure, and in a specific location. If you download and save the attachment according to something in the email, some text written in the email, you can do that as well. So as long as the logic is there that you can explain to us, then you know, you can put that logic into the robot.
Okay, no, I'm sure that would be good, because I mean, for a lot of this, seeing something is the way we'll really come to understand it and engage with it, which is why we've spoken about, could we run a project to help people create a little bot to understand the processes and actually to go through it in a sort of safe environment. And I know it was hidden at the bottom of one of your slides, Kally, the notion that we might create this opportunity. So Kally and I have been discussing, could we set up a group to run you know, a collective session that would be a couple of hours to actually give people the chance to create their own little bot to do some process or other. So Kally's agreed that, you know, if there are, say, up to 10 of us who would like to do that for a minimal charge of £50, she would be pleased to take us all through a bot creation exercise. So it's nice to see we've got a count me in there from Roger already. So I know Roger's keen on this sort of subject, but I put that out to everybody. I think it would be a great group for us to create and support each other on as we explore opportunities to find ways just to get the first small process automated, because once we've got over that hurdle, we'll find other opportunities, I'm sure. It's just understanding that it is for our world and it is possible. I'm sure that's the greatest barrier for us.
Yeah, I mean, basically what we'll do is we'll recommend one of the free community editions. We'll send you a link before for you to download it. It takes a minute. We'll take you through some simple little processes where you're, you know, reading from a spreadsheet or a CSV and writing back, and to a web-based system, just so you can look at how the interaction works, sending emails, that sort of thing. That's very achievable easily in a couple of hours. And if you've got some a use case yourself that you want to discuss a little bit, you know, it could be something that's discussed on there should be enough time to give you a yay or nay. That would be simple to do, and point you to the commands that you would use within the tool if you wanted to play around afterwards.
So would Roger even get the chance to see if he could index his attachments to get them filed properly? Or is that too big a project?
Yeah, well, it's not a day's course. I was going to say he could try in his lunch hour, but we could show him exactly what he needs to do to get that going.
Okay, that's great. I mean, so well, if anyone is interested in that, get in touch with me, because we'll then circulate some more information and give you some guidance, I'm sure, on how to select an appropriate project, because that's key to making this work in its very small scale. But I'm sure that seeing will create a lot more believers if we can just get over that first little hurdle. So do come back to me if you're interested. Clive's asked the question, can RPA bots learn while they're doing the job, adapting to new exceptions as they arise, or do they have to be reprogrammed?
Right, they have to be reprogrammed usually, is the summary version of that, yes.
Okay.
They're quite structured. Now, saying that, there are parts of it that are that machine learning is used, and that is, as I explained, on the invoicing side. For example, one of the vendors, Automation Anywhere, has got a component in it called IQBot, which you can train it and say, look, I'm getting all these templates from different invoices, and you run it through what you call a training mode, and say, yeah, for this vendor, I get the invoice numbers from here. And you just click on the page where it is and feed in all the different types of templates from your suppliers you get, and it builds it from the machine learning. Now that's mainly for the documents. If it's any other system, then there hasn't really been, that's not part of it. You'd have to probably do that with some other tool, I think. And there are so many tools on the market that integrate into RPA.
Okay.
Different readers and that sort of thing. So that's something maybe a consultancy would look at your requirement and say, yeah, well, if you use this to do that bit, integrate it into RPA, you've got your solution. So there's a new buzzword out there, Paul, at the moment, which is hyper automation, which is basically the whole end-to-end of a process from the beginning. So it might be, it starts with a chatbot, goes into another kind of reader, digitizes all the data that you need, feeds it into the robot, and the robot does the processing and bangs out the output, for something else to pick up. So the whole end-to-end, all the complete process, and that could be a couple of different tools doing that.
Okay, so if we're to do this project together, I mean, how small a project should we be trying to get our head around to make sure, to increase the likelihood of success? Could you give us some examples of things that you think just would be relevant for that?
How do you mean? What type of process?
Or just thinking, average processes in the office. We all have billing systems. We all have emails that we have to file, as Roger was saying. I'm just trying to think of the right style of project and going back to the repetitive and the volume. But how small should it be to make it something we can achieve success in?
Okay, so that is quite a key question. That is why I mentioned all about the other costs and what's involved. What in-house experts you need to involve in that whole process of analysing, giving that knowledge over to a developer, the business knowledge. All that needs to be done. So I think you have to look at each individual case and look at how much resource internally you're going to need to support this, how much testing time. So what we've found is that what could look like a very simple process, 10 steps, and to do what we call a happy run, we could probably do it in a day. But soon as the business start telling us, oh yeah, but if it's got this in the data, then we do that, and if it's got this in that column, then we do that, and then if you've got both of these, then you go and do a third route, and that's where it becomes so one process itself might look very simple, but the logic and the routes it contains could be multiple. So the bolt has to be coded and built for every eventuality. So that's where the size of the bot could be quite larger than you initially thought. So those are things we'd have to look at. And in some cases, it's not dependent on data at all. The content that you're just taking the data from X, putting it in here, and running something in the system. Easy as that, and it could probably be done in 2 days. You just don't know until you actually sit with the subject matter experts and then find out really how much logic is actually involved. That's where the extra bit of coding comes in, the if logic, blah, blah, blah. Otherwise, the process is literally in a day or two, you can do a happy run.
So what sort of thinking, obviously, we're looking sort of inwards at our own businesses, but all of our members have got hundreds, if not thousands, of clients of their own. When they're looking at their clients' businesses and trying to help enlighten them to opportunities to automate some of their processes, what size of business starts to have someone whose real focus is on automating processes within their business these days? Is it smaller than we think? Right.
So no, I don't see it's size dependent at all. Okay. I mean, yes, initially it is the larger companies, the banks, the insurance companies who actually started this a few years ago and went in quite early. But it's suitable for medium-sized companies. It's suitable for small companies. In fact, even if you're a one-man band, or there's 5 in a team, you qualify for what we call the community editions, which are free. So up to, I think, 250 employees, the software can be free. Your cost then, you still got to look at is development. Can you do it yourself, or are you going to pay somebody else to do it? So as we know, consultancy and labour is usually equally or a bigger cost than the software. So don't just concentrate on the software costs, is what I say. Be prepared that there are going to be some initial development costs.
Yeah.
And you've got to work out the return on investment yourself, really, like, what is this really costing me at the moment? You know, maybe in fixing problems all the time. Maybe it's a system that's not reliable. Lots of human intervention. How much is that labour costing me? So there is a sort of a formula we can follow with you to go through and say, look, these are sort of things you go look at and get back and find out.
The best known example I've seen in our world is one of our members in Denmark have automated a year-end process, and that every client that they work on is on a piece of software called Caseware, where they do their audits and prepare their accounts each year. But at the end of each year, that has to be rolled over into a new year. And they worked out 2 or 3 years ago that it takes them half an hour manually to roll over from one year to the next. And over a couple of years, they've developed a program that automates that. And so they do that process for 6,000 clients. So suddenly they're saving 3,000 hours a year by doing that process of just moving data from one system to another system to start the next year. So that, you know, in our world is a great example of making something very cost effective.
Yeah, exactly. So let's say it's half an hour for one client. You know, RPA might not be the solution, because by the time you developed it, paid for the license, it's not worth it. You know, it's an hour of somebody's time once every quarter or something. You probably say, no, not worth it at all. But when you, like you said, you're a firm that does that for multiple of clients, and suddenly you've got hundreds of them, of those 1 hours, then yes, then it's worth it. So then that's where the money comes. It's not how big the process is how much time are you actually saving, I guess.
Okay. Well, I haven't got any more questions from the floor. So if anyone's got one, get it in quick. Otherwise, I would say let's focus on this opportunity to create a bot together, or each create your own bot. If we can create a group of people to do that, I think it'll move you forward more than ever it would listening to presentations and reading articles. Just you need to get and do one. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally agree. By the end of the 2 hours, you'll get a really good understanding of what it can and can't do, and you can make your own judgment.
Yeah. So I think that's the real opportunity that today was focused on, to get a group together to have a bot creation session. So get in touch if that is of interest to you. I'll say thanks, Kally, for giving us this introduction, because I just wanted it to be, you know, a first step. We hear about RPA all the time, but very, very few of us engage with it because it's not our field of excellence. But there's an opportunity there to really move some of your firms forward, get some of the processes automated, and at the end of the day, there's only, you know, one group of people that will benefit from making these things financially or commercially better driven. So there's some really positive outcomes to accuracy and to saving money at the end of the day. I think that sums it up. Is there anything you'd like to add as a summary, Kally? If not, we'll sign off.
No, look forward to anyone coming on the sessions. They're quite fun and they're very easy, so I wouldn't even worry about technical knowledge at all.
No, well, I think that's the key thing, because we're all frightened of making ourselves look very silly in front of people. But as anyone listens to me, they'll have realised I got over that a long time ago. So I think we could all have some fun and learn something. I hope lots of you want to join. And thanks again for Kally for running this today. It's been a really useful introduction. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Paul.
Clive, if you could turn everybody else off in the background, I'll say goodbye to you all and see you soon. Are you with us, Clive?
I am.
Splendid. Thank you.
How do I unbroadcast?
I think you have to kill each person off individually, I think.
Isn't that illegal?
Poor use of language.